Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to 30 Days of No Time to Die, Day 1. Dun, dun, dun! My name's Tom Sears, and I'm joined by my compadre in Bond, Mr. Chris Wright. How are you doing?
I am excited, Tommy boy. I'm so excited. Day 1, No Time to Die.
Yeah, bruv. We did it, didn't we? We got there. We did it.
How long have we been waiting for this? Well, how long has everyone been waiting for this?
Like, yeah, absolutely. And some of them, bless their hearts, are still waiting, aren't they? Our friends down under, some of our American cousins.
Yeah, we've got to put that shout out to everyone who hasn't been able to see it yet, you know. Yeah. Stay strong, keep safe, absolutely. And hopefully the time will fly by until you can.
So we should say this right out of the gate. Spoilers left, right and centre. So if you are listening to this thinking it's going to be non-spoilery, for God's sake, press stop. Just wait for a little while until you see the film and then come back and join us, because we are going to be saying some things you do not want to hear if you haven't seen the film yet. All right? Is that clear, everybody?
That is very true. Like initially we did think, oh, should we do one little episode as a non-spoiler sort of episode? But then we were thinking, well, we won't be able to chat about what we want to chat about.
Yeah.
So this is going to be obviously spoiler throughout the whole campaign. So anyone that's listening now who hasn't seen it, turn us off and please come back once you've listened and watched the film and stuff, and then you can listen to all the content then.
All right then. So just to make it 100% clear, after this point that I'm saying right now, you are not safe. Okay, you are not safe after now. So that's your last warning before we go.
Have we got like a warning sign, like
there it is. There was the warning sign. There it was. Very nice. Dude. Now, I've got a question for you, right? Question number 1. Chris
Straight
Wright,
away, out the bag. Yes.
When was the last time you cried at a film?
As in recently or beyond recently?
The last time.
I would have to say that was 2 days ago, 3 days ago.
And what was the film?
And the film happened to be No Time to Die, my friend.
Yeah,
No Time to Die.
Yeah. Do you know the last time I cried at a film?
Go on.
It was Paddington 2. There was the scene where Paddington gets put in jail and he turns around and he says, "But Mrs. Brown usually reads me a bedtime story." And do you know what? I fucking started blubbering. Little teddy bear.
Oh, mate, that's so cute. Because Paddington, great films. Obviously, Ben Whishaw as well. Superb. And crying, quite a few people obviously shed tears at No Time to Die. And you kind of think, well, you know, should I be crying and all this? But now you mentioned Paddington 2, I feel totally fine about No Time to Die.
Nice. Yeah, man. Yeah. What an emotional journey. And I tell you what, as well, it's, the film aside, I've been on an emotional journey, because I feel like this film, man, this one is going to divide so many people massively, and no more so than within myself within the space of a few days. So like what okay, so picture yourself, go back in time, Tuesday night, we're in the Royal Albert Hall watching the premiere, the credits roll. What are you feeling?
Well, the same as a lot of people, I think, which was shell-shocked, is the term that I thought of at the time, and I stand by that. In terms of, like, I'd obviously just seen the film. There were things I knew I loved about it that I was like, oh my God, that bit was so good. And there were things that I just wasn't sure about, because it's completely new territory, some of the things that were in this Bond film. And also certain things I was like, as people probably know who's listening, I went into this film pretty dark. Like I did not know a lot. I'd seen a few stills, heard a couple of rumours, but pretty much I was dark. So there were certain things which I had no idea about. So what did you
know going in?
What did I know? I'd seen a picture of Safin with the mask and the jacket, and I knew there was a scene set in the snow. I knew the DB5 was there. I knew the V8 was going to make an appearance. I obviously knew Madeleine Swan was in there, but I didn't know she was going to come back after that initial bit in this film, which was interesting for me. And also I knew Blofeld was going to be in it at some point. That's about it.
That's not bad. That's not bad going, man, actually, in the grand scheme of things. I guess I was, because obviously I watched the trailers, so I'd pick some of that up. But then after all the delays, I tried to wipe my mind clean. So I didn't watch them again. I just tried to forget as much as I could.
Did that help?
Yes, it did. I think absolutely. And then the only thing I knew, he was going to have a daughter in there.
Ooh, I'm so glad.
Yeah,
like,
I'm glad
know
you
that
didn't get that. But thankfully, well, not thankfully at all, actually.
No.
But I'd managed to duck and dive that because I remember the day that broke in the press, and everyone was like, "Whoa, get off the internet today because there's a massive spoiler going around." And I managed to avoid it until somebody tweeted it directly at us and went, "Hey, have you heard Bond's got a daughter in the new film?"
God.
And I was like, for fuck. And to be fair to him, he did feel awful afterwards. He tweeted, he was like, "I can't believe I just did that. Are you going to name and shame him right I can't even remember the dude's,
I am joking.
but I don't think it was done maliciously. I think he literally got excited and didn't think. And it's like, all right, you know what? He was good about it. So I went in knowing that. I'd always considered there was a possibility he might die at the end. And this one, I thought if there was ever a time that they were going to do that, it would be now, right? So the title of the film threw me, because it's called No Time to Die. So you would imagine he's not got time to die, and it wouldn't happen. But of course he does. Yeah. So, man. So for me, I'll tell you what my reaction was. My reaction after those credits rolled was, fuck, I don't know if I like this. I think I've got a horrible feeling I really don't like this, and this is a huge disappointment to me. And I went on a journey over a couple of days where it was very similar to when I saw Casino Royale, right? Whereby the first time I saw it, I came out, I was like, I don't know what to think about this. This is so different. I don't know how I feel about it. And then I went home, and I remember just thinking it over and thinking, oh yeah, no, I really like that bit. That was cool. Oh, that bit was really cool, actually. And that bit was great. And oh, it wasn't that cool. And then slowly convincing myself that actually I think this might be really good. And then when I went back to watch it the second time, I was like, actually, I think this might be the best Bond film ever made. So that was the journey I went through with Casino. With this, it was very similar. I was like, I don't know if I like this. But it went the opposite way, where for 2 straight days, I was like, I was thinking of things that annoyed me. And they were popping up with things I didn't like. And by the time Thursday hit, so obviously we had the premiere on Tuesday and then the JBR family gathering on the Thursday night, I'd convinced myself that I hated the film, right? And I was like, I hated this. I don't want to see Bond going, oh, he's so beautiful, little daughter. I don't want it, right? That's not the Bond I want, right? And to be fair, No Time to Die is not the film I ordered, right? When I put my order in with Barbara, there's some things I wanted. I wanted some sneaky Bond. I didn't get any sneaky Bond. I wanted some proper, like, dick swinging, love maker Bond. Didn't get any of that at all. And there, I wanted that cool moment, like the bit with Lucia Sciarra in the villa that I love so much, Inspector, with the opera music on and the excellent time for a drink. Those fucking cool Bond moments where I'm like, that's my boy right there, and I get really excited. I didn't get any of those moments in this film, right? So I think that's what I was missing on that first viewing. It was like, this is so drastically different to what I wanted and what I was expecting. I had to kind of process that a little bit. And I do know there are quite a few members of the JBR family that don't like the film still. Like, I think you won't mind me saying, Brian Dobson, he struggled with it quite a lot. He's like, it's just not what I wanted. I'm really disappointed. And I know a few others feel the same. And then something happened, right? I can't explain it at all. But I was on my way to Leicester Square on the Thursday, and I was walking through Leicester Square, and I saw a table of JBR family. There was David West and AJ, Tom Stanier, and another dude who I don't think I'd actually met, so I didn't know his name. And they went, come over here. And AJ was disappointed on Tuesday as well, I remember. He said he went home and he was all shell-shocked as well, and was like, oh man, I don't know how I feel. And he went, it's all about the second viewing. I don't know why, but I loved it after the second viewing. And everybody else on the table said the same. And you sent me a message, Jen, because you went that morning. I didn't do the morning show. You sent me a message and were like, dude, it's total 180. I love it now. And I'm going in there thinking, this is bullshit. There's no fucking way I'm going to go in there and I'm going to love the film. These people are mental, right? So we did our little pre-thing drinks. I sat down and I watched it for the second time, and I cannot explain it, but I loved it on the second viewing. And I don't even know why that happened. Now, I'd say the word masterpiece has been thrown around a lot, right? And for me personally, I think that's too strong a word, right? Fair play to anybody that thinks that's absolutely fine. But for me, I think masterpiece is too strong a word, because for me, I think like for me, a true masterpiece is Back to the Future. That's a perfect film, cannot be improved in any way, shape or form, right? In the world of Bond, I would say there are several masterpieces. even though they do have their flaws. So I would say On Her Majesty's Secret Service is a masterpiece, but obviously it has its flaws, man. It's not a perfect film. There are things that could be tweaked and jiggled around a little bit, and so on. As it currently stands, I think perhaps Casino is the closest we've got to a genuine, all the boxes ticked masterpiece. So for me, I think there's a little bit too strong. And I do have a lot of thoughts about this film. So I did love it on the second viewing. And as it stands today, I've still only seen it twice at this point. Because there are things that I'm like, I wish they'd have done that different. And I've got a lot, I've done a lot of thinking of where it falls down for me and where its strengths are, for me personally. And there are quite a few things I would do differently in the film, it must be said, right? And we'll obviously get into that in the over the course of the 30 Days of No Time to Die. But then, of course, you've got that ending, man. And that ending is like an earth-shattering ending, right? Some would say you should never do that. That should never be done, right? That's not the rules of the game. But here's where I stand in the grand scheme of things. And obviously, we will drill down into more detail. But in the grand scheme of things, here's where I think the land lies at the moment, and it may change. I think what we have here is quite possibly one of the most important Bond films, right? It will join that pantheon of Majesties and Spy Who Loved Me and GoldenEye and Casino and all of those. Because what you've got here isn't a normal Bond film. I actually came out on Tuesday thinking, I feel like I haven't seen a Bond film. I feel like I've seen something else. I feel like I've seen a film that has James Bond in it, but it's not a Bond film, right? What we have here is a film where they've made some very new and very brave choices, right? And it's totally uncharted water in that regard. And I mean, when was the last time, other than, Water Gun Boy and Diamonds, where you've seen a child in a Bond film, right? Those things don't typically mix over the last 60 odd years. You don't have kids in Bond films. Whereas obviously with this one that you do, and that's where I think the disconnect happened for me. It's like the usual stuff isn't in here, or maybe it is a bit, but like there's other stuff in here that you never see in a Bond film before. Now, that could either mean it's a disaster and it's wrong. It's the wrong decision to have those things in there because that's not what Bond does. Or the other option is this. We're treading some new water here and we're pushing Bond into new areas, which is obviously a very important thing to do because at the end of the day, if you just remake You Only Live Twice again and again, you're going to run out of big vehicles that can swallow small vehicles and it's just going to dilute and dilute and dilute until the point where it's just fucking boring, right? So it's new. And it's uncomfortable. I think it's a definite uncomfortable watch for a lot of people, me included, right? I don't think this is not your Sunday afternoon Bond film, is it? You're not going to pop this on Sunday while you're eating your roast dinner and have it on in the background. This is a different beast, man. And what I will say before I turn the mic over to you, because I realise I've been gabbling on for ages, I will say, what was it I was going to say? My mind's gone. My mind's just gone blank in that second. Hold on. I had something really good to say. Shit. What was it?
Bring it back. Bring it back.
Hold on. So it's an important one. It was not a Sunday
Different territory,
Bond.
not a Sunday.
Different territory.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. It's gone. It's going to come back to me at some point. I bet you as soon as you start talking, it will jump into my mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me turn it over to you, man. Give me your thinkings.
Wow, I don't know. I mean,
sorry, that was a massive brain dump. I didn't give you a moment to breathe there. I apologize.
But it is needed to.
Yeah.
I feel the same as you on a lot of things. Like that first viewing, I just came out, and I really was just not quite sure. Like you said, it's completely uncharted territory. With like you mentioned, the kids. Obviously, we got the little boy in Golden Gun, I think, as well, and the one in Diamonds, and that's probably not too many others. And like you said, it can go either of two ways. And when I first watched it, it was like watching something I hadn't seen before in a Bond film. And a lot of it didn't feel like a Bond film, like you said. And upon first viewing, it kind of threw me completely, as I'm sure it did for a lot of people. And I came out thinking, God, I really don't know what to think, just because it's so much to process, man. You think about all the differences. You've got the runtime, which is huge, although saying that, I don't think it outstayed its welcome. I think it was good value for the money in terms of, I've seen films hitting that length and being way sort of slower than No Time to Die. But then it was all about that second viewing. I spoke, like you mentioned, Tom Stanley, and we were both the same, came out feeling the same, watched it the second time. And we watched it in the BFI, and I have to say that on the premiere, the sound wasn't great. So the dialogue was too low. So there are certain scenes, important scenes, where you've got main characters saying stuff which you can't hear because the sound effects are too high. And I think that didn't help the first viewing at all. Particularly like Safin's character is quite softly spoken. And if you're missing certain things where he's explaining the plot or saying like lines which they reference later on and you're not hearing it, obviously it's not going to work as a film as well. But the BFI, the sound was perfect, the picture was perfect, and we could just soak it up. And it was funny because at the end, like, I was caught really emotionally by it, and I could feel I had some sort of some eyes trickling down, some water trickling down my cheeks, and I didn't want to sort of turn to see what anyone was up to, but I saw sort of Rory shuffling next to me, and I looked and he was crying. Then I leaned over slightly, saw John was crying, and then Marlena was crying, and then basically there was like 8, 9, 10 of us all in tears, which I thought was quite sweet. And it's an incredibly powerful moment, which I've never had before in a Bond film. So I'm all about that being like absolutely amazing. And it is tricky because it is new, but then you've got to think back. Okay, so think to Majesties. Think of the end of Majesties when Tracy dies. That had never been done before. You've got Bond being like an absolute like superhero for the first 5 films or whatever, and then suddenly here he is, and then you got that downbeat emotional ending, and it must have thrown people so much back then. And I think similarly with this, that first viewing is going to be, it's the only time you're going to see it where you don't know it's going to happen, and that's when it hits you. And then afterwards, once you know that's coming, you can almost appreciate it and the build up around that. And that's certainly what happened with me, man. I think once you know what to expect, almost, because it's obviously we all have such a picture in our minds of what the new Bond film is going to be or what it should be. We all think we're the expert in that, don't we? Every single one of us. And when it's not that, it's something so drastically different and so unexpected with that ending as well, and so different. Like, I think I remember what I was going to say when you said that about Majesties. That's true, man. Majesties is a very brave ending, and you can imagine coming out of Majesties and being like, fuck, what a downer ending that was. And it was, man. I feel like in the Albert Hall on Tuesday, that almost felt like a funeral procession coming out of there, man. It was very subdued sort of mood in the room. And I think what got the biggest cheer that night was when you saw James Bond will return at the end of the thing.
Totally.
Right?
Like on both nights, Tuesday night and Thursday night particularly.
I think
was like,
every screen
when that came up on screen, myself included. And do you know what I think it's going to be, man? I think what we've witnessed here is perhaps not the film that many of us wanted, right? But I think maybe it's the right film, generally speaking, to finish off Daniel's run and make it really mean something. And do you know what? I suspect in like 20 years' time, my little boy Charlie will say to me something like, Dad, what was it like seeing that on the big screen for the first time when you didn't know it was coming? I think it's going to be one of those movies, like when for us with the older generation of like, what would it have been like seeing Majesties on the screen on the big screen for the first time, even though you would have known how it ended because you've probably read the book back then. But do you know what I mean? I think it's going to be one of those things where people are going to, I tell you what, people are going to remember this one, man, because it's when does James Bond die? He doesn't. He fucking doesn't. He always escapes, right? And for somebody who's in the Dobson camp with this, it's like, well, he shouldn't fucking die because he's James Bond. I should walk out of that cinema with feeling like my balls are 3 times the size that they are because I've just watched a Bond film and I've watched a dude be the coolest motherfucker ever, but I haven't this time. I've seen him die, and that's a very strange thing. I remember watching that, reading that, I forget what it's called now, but you remember that book that was cancelled that was going to be a Bond book and he dies in the book?
Yeah.
I remember reading that. It was online somewhere. People listening know what I mean, but my brain's not working properly. I remember reading that and reading Bond's death in that book. And if I remember correctly, he's garroted in the book and that's how he dies. And I remember feeling a real emotional thing. I was like, fuck, I'm gutted reading this. I don't like it. And I was like, well, it wasn't released, so it didn't happen. Job done. Move on. Go back to Fleming. Whereas this, man, I think of how this colours Daniel's entire run now, man. Because when we watch Casino again, we know where he ends up. We know where this journey finishes. It's not like any of the other Bonds where they just sort of vanish into the ether and then some new younger dude comes and takes over. Well, we know he's going to end up dead now. So when we watch Casino Royale and he's sitting there opposite Le Chiffre being a cool bastard, in the backs of our mind somewhere is going to be the picture of him stood on that hill with the missiles coming in. And that's where that version of Bond ends, man. And I feel like it's going to colour everything, isn't it, really?
For me, it's actually helped to improve Spectre.
Okay.
Like, Spectre is a film that I've gone up and down with.
Yeah.
I've always kind of enjoyed like the first half, the first 2/3, and always found the last bit a bit tricky. But weirdly, like the retconning in Spectre, kind of I wasn't keen on. But now having this next bit in Spectre, it's really helped improve the level. In No Time to Die, it's really helped to improve the level of Spectre for me, which is one thing. Another thing, which is, you know, what Bond timelines are connected. So if you thinking of Majesty's Tracy's death, you think License to Kill, when he had a wife, she died. You think Spy Who Loved Me, wife killed. You think maybe exactly. Fiore's Only with a Grave, and potentially with Pierce as well. There's a bit with Electra and stuff like that. So you can kind of suggest that those Bonds are connected within the same world. Daniels have never been remotely connected, in my eyes, or for me personally, to the other realm of Bond. Because you've got him starting out as a 00, you've got him going almost to retirement pretty soon, which is a bit strange. But his tenure, his films, for me, they are standalone. They're nothing to do with the Connery Bonds or Rogers Bond, anything like that. This is Daniel's Bond, and because I've heard a lot of people say, well, what can you do? Bond's dead. Oh, dead. You know, you can't bring him back. So what are you going to do? But in my mind, of course you can. Absolutely you can. It's just a clean slate. Of course it is.
I mean,
and you just
it's
start
silly
again.
to think any other way. Of course it is. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. In my mind, Daniel's Bond is almost an alternate dimension Bond. He never met Dr. Noel Goldfinger. He wouldn't have gone on to meet those people. Which the whole Skyfall DB5 thing always felt a bit off to me with the guns and all that stuff, because it's like, well, it's not supposed to be the Goldfinger Aston Martin. You know what I mean?
It's got different guns in this one, though.
Yeah,
so
it certainly does. So it's his own thing. And I tell you what, man, I predict, however long it takes, whether it's sooner or whether it's later, when the next Bond comes along, think about it, man. The first film of every Bond is always a cracker, of every actor, right? The last Bond of every actor is usually not very good, right? And I think across the board, this is the finest final Bond movie of an actor.
Easily.
Hands
Absolutely
down.
easily.
I love Diamonds, but yeah, like without a shadow of a doubt, it is the best, finale for a Bond actor. Imagine it, man, right? So imagine let's just give him a faceless person at this point, because we don't know who he's going to be. Let's say there's an unknown actor comes along and he's the new man, right? And he's somewhere around 35 in the prime of his life. And then, imagine there's some sort of Living Daylight style intro where he turns to face the camera and there's our new Bond. And it's going to be like, fuck yeah, he's back. Because you know what they're going to have to do next time, man? It's going to have to be classic Bond. He's going to have to, so it feels like Bond, you're going to have those key tropes in there. I know obviously they took some out for Casino Royale, but you know what I'm saying. You're going to have like a casino scene. You're going to have a good car chase, and it's going to have to be like they did with Daylights. It's a new guy, but you have those classic elements in there. Hopefully they go back to some Fleming and do that, but I feel like we're all going to. I feel like we're almost guaranteed a great movie for the next one. Touch fucking wood. Anyway, that's man. So there's so much to discuss about this one, man. There really is, and I can't wait to get stuck in. Just to briefly gloss over my thoughts of where it falls down for me is this: when you look at it as a piece of the whole of the 5 Daniel films, right? What you have here, and obviously it wasn't planned this way to begin with, so let's just obviously put that out there. Obviously, by the time they got the rights to Spectre and all that kind of stuff, it's like, okay, well, let's do that now, and obviously retconning and doing all that kind of stuff. That obviously it would have been better if they could have done it from day one and the whole 5 films planned out, but it didn't happen that way. So like, all right, whatever. That's the way the cookie crumbled. So here's my thoughts on this. I feel like where No Time to Die drops for me, where I think they could have done it better, is that you've got this 5-part story where essentially you've got Blofeld in the shadows, Puppet Master, all the way through. Then you get to Spectre, and that's all finally revealed. And then there's the showdown. Blofeld gets arrested. Knew that was a bad move as soon as that happened. He should have escaped 100% in his bathrobe down the Thames.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we have this weird little mini cameo with Blofeld where he dies by accident. And it's like, fuck, man, that should not have happened, right? Here's what I think should have happened. Blofeld should have been the main villain, right? Maybe somewhat like The World Is Not Enough, where Blofeld is the main villain. Blofeld's escaped off screen since Spectre, right? And maybe Blofeld's escape is what brings Bond back into the service or something. Some Felix comes to him and says, "Hey, man, Blofeld's escaped, blah blah blah," and that reactivates Bond and gets him back in. So Blofeld's already escaped. We still have Safin. Maybe it's a different. Maybe it's not Rami Malek. Maybe it's something else. But Safin is an operative of Spectre. He's essentially a henchman, but he's, for all intents and purposes, he's the sort of focus villain for most of the film. And then, Ralphie Babes and I had a little mini script meeting on this topic, and I think between us we've hashed it out and we've nailed it, right? So there is a showdown with Safin, and maybe Safin is like a big burly Hinks type dude instead of what we got with Rami. And dude, that fucking Blofeld showdown, it should have been Blofeld infecting Bond with the shit, right? And it should have been, then you get the strangulation scene in the Garden of Death, because it's Blofeld's Garden of Death. It's not Safin's Garden of Death, right? It should have been Blofeld's. Then you have the die of Blofeld die bit, because then you'd have really believed it, man. Think of how much more power that would have had if that was Bond and Blofeld facing off in that Garden of Death, and it was Blofeld that gave him the touch of death with the hand. And then obviously we get the ending that we did. For me, that would have been so much more powerful. Like the killing of Blofeld would have meant so much more, because as it stands, man, what we have is this 5-part saga, all building up to meeting Blofeld in 4 and defeating him. And then we've got this weird little coda on the end with a different villain that then results in the death of Bond. And I feel like that, to me, as part of the whole opera sequence of it, the 5 pieces, I feel like that seems strange. I feel like the final showdown should have been this puppet master who had his arm in every single event leading up to the end. What do you think about that?
I definitely wouldn't have been against that. I think that's obviously kind of what every Bond fan wanted in a way in terms of Blofeld. But I think if we're saying Daniel's Bond films are different to the rest, you've got to think his Blofeld's different to the rest. Yeah. So you can't think the volcano, hollowed out volcano and all that business. We only know that he's kind of just been in the background in this, but we don't know anything else. Yeah. And I think if they were able to plan it out, then great. And I think that would have been the way to go. But the fact is they weren't. And I don't know because for me, the whole thing in Spectre and the ending doesn't really work. So even if they'd done that in this one, I'm still like the Blofeld for me. This particular version of Blofeld hasn't been the best. Yeah. So do you think
so? With that though, surely that would have given him the meat that we needed to see a real Blofeld story. You know what I mean?
Potentially, but I think you needed to fit in another 1 or 2 films between them, maybe at least another one for me. And also, I'm a big fan of the Safin character and the fact that the motivation for Safin. The fact that Blofeld was responsible for ordering the kill on his family, which was Madeleine's father, I think that's huge. And I'm a big fan of that and his motivation. The whole thing with the killing the Spectre team in the party, it's like, well, obviously the Spectre that we know have got people everywhere. Yeah. And that sort of party scene didn't have a huge amount of people. I think maybe it was the main Spectre, numbers, Spectre numbered agents as opposed to every Spectre, whatever. So there is that, but I don't know. I'd certainly have loved that, but equally, I do really like the character of Safin.
Yeah, for me, it's all a bit too neat and tidy. I don't like seeing all of Spectre just demolished in one scene because it makes them look like a bit cheap and crap. Do you know what I mean? And then seeing Blofeld die by accident like that for me is like, oh man, that's not the end note for such an important character. Him dying by accident doesn't please me.
I think it boils down to just not having the rights early enough and being able to plan it out.
Yeah,
because you've got him in 2 movies, and his total screen time in those 2 movies is probably about 15 minutes, maybe. If you got that, and you just can't pull the magic when you've only got that amount of time. I think it's tricky.
Well, man, so lots to be talked about, I think, and So, how many times have you seen it as of today?
So to date, 3, and I've booked in another 2. So I've got 1 coming up in a couple of days, and I'm taking Michelle to see it next week as well. So she'll see it for the first time. Yeah. Hopefully spoiler free if I keep my voice down. Yeah. No. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. That's the other thing. It's 2 hours 46 minutes. Obviously, the first viewing was different because it sort of threw us. After the second viewing, I was so amped to see it the third time, which was actually the same day. I'm amped to see it again, and I'm really excited to see this film. Like I know with some of them, some of the more recent ones, I might have seen it and watched it because I knew it was a Bond film and I wanted to like it. But this film, I've had more excitement from this film than any other Daniel except Casino. Ooh. In terms of watching it. And for me, I've only seen it 3 times, but for me, it's right up there. So I'm putting Casino, No Time just underneath, and then quite a gap towards 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's. I've yet to rate it personally because I need some more time to let it settle down. But I think, it's definitely one people are going to remember and remember for a long time. In the same way that forever, when you were a kid, there was always that talk of like, oh, what's that one where he gets married? That always stuck out to me, And I think for obvious reasons, this will be the same. Let me ask you this: Are you gutted that he's dead? Is there any part of you that's like, man, they should have left it open-ended just in case they can squeeze him back for one more and make him an offer he can't refuse and do one more Daniel?
The way that they played it and set it up, I think that's the perfect way for the ending to happen for his version of Bond. Personally, there's obviously everyone knows there's lots of you only live twice in this from the novel. And I think one of the main things is Bond looking death in the face. And when he climbs up and sees those missiles and he's just looking at them coming towards him while speaking to Madeline about Matilda and everything, I just thought, fuck, this is just so powerful. And for me, I wouldn't change it at all. But if I knew that Daniel was going to potentially do another one, then maybe you could have had the Safin thing, keep Blofeld for one more, and then do a massive standoff with Blofeld in the next one. But obviously,
I originally thought my feelings about that ending were, it just feels like Bond gives up. Like that's not the Bond I know. It feels like he's just like, all right, whatever, and then here we go, and that's what kind of annoyed me about it. But on my second viewing, there is so much more meaning to it than that, in the sense that obviously he knows, like he's got Q over the speaker thing, and Q's like, as well as I do, Bond, that you can't get rid of it and all that kind of stuff. And then that's the moment where he's like, well, life isn't worth living then. There's no point in carrying on if I can't see Madeline and Matilda Bond.
Matilda,
didn't see that coming, but and there's that moment, dude, where he's sort of limping across that control room before he gets on the ladder. And I don't know whether I'm imagining it. I think he might be channeling George a little bit, because Q's like, oh my God, I don't realize. And he's like, it's all right. Yeah. And he's got that sort of calming tone to his voice in the same way that George does at the end of Majesties. It's quite all right, really. She's just
I'm getting a little bit shivery just you saying that.
I know. And it's like, as he's climbing up that ladder, because you're right, he's climbing up there so he can stand there and just accept his fate. He's not trying to hide. He's not.
And how brave is that? Like, how ballsy is that?
Yeah.
I think that is exactly what Bond would do.
Yeah.
Exactly what Bond would do.
I think you might be right, man. And that's it. And I think that's the key turning point, is when he realizes that he can't, if he can't see her anymore and he can't see his kid anymore, what is there to live for, you know? And yeah, at that moment as he's sloping over, it's all right, and put Madeline on, and he's climbing up that thing, and they're having the chat, and then he gets to the top, and it's like, when I first heard him deliver that, you made the most beautiful thing. First time I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, what's this? This is not the Bond I'm looking for here. You know what I'm saying? Where's the fucking come on Bond? You know. Second time round, totally different, and it was like, fuck, man, that's a deep kick in the ball bag. That it really is, as for the viewer.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah. I mean, what an ending, man. What an ending. And like I say, I totally understand those people that don't like it, because I have been through that feeling of not liking it, and I totally understand it. I see why Dobson's like, no, this isn't, I'm gutted. I'm really disappointed with this, because it doesn't have any of those things. Any of those, if you gave me a checklist, or I gave a checklist to Eon to say, look, this is what I want from Bond for the next one, please. Can you stick this in there? It wouldn't have ticked any of those boxes. And I think ultimately that's why my initial reaction was like that. Was like, it just wasn't what I'd ordered. right. But in retrospect, looking back, having seen it a second time and accepting it for what it is, I now get it. And it's just, man, that second viewing was so different for me. And I totally went in thinking you lot were all bullshitting me, because so many of you said it's all about that second viewing. And I was like, nah. What is possibly going to change? But it did, and I can't explain it other than
it's really strange, and I'm so happy for you, man, because I always like keeping my fingers crossed, and everyone that I spoke to was like, oh, everyone was asking me, oh, do you think Tom, the second viewing, because he really wasn't sure of the first one, and I was like, I don't know, man. He was pretty uncertain, but there is a flicker of hope there. And then when the film finished and I looked at you and you leaned over and you're like, I love that. Yeah. And I was like, oh, yes. It's such a good feeling.
It was such a... Do you know what would help more, though, man? If they just made these films a little bit more fucking often. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's the thing, because we waited 6 years for this. And it's like, I totally get Dobson's disappointment, because it's a long time to wait, man, and to not get the film that you wanted. And that's a kick in the balls for somebody who's not enjoyed themselves. If these were coming out every 3 years like clockwork, it would be like, all right, okay, all right, I'll accept this one's a bit different, and then we know we've got a new one coming soon. But as it stands, man, we've got no idea how long it's going to be. Is it going to be 3 years? Is it going to be 10? We've got no idea.
Well, hopefully not fucking 10. Yeah. So quickly then, what did you think about? So the fact that I went dark on it and didn't really know much, compared to someone who, obviously you went a little bit quiet on it towards the end, but someone who had seen all the trailers, read all the info that was available, all the stills, everything like that, that's a lot of information to then form a film in your mind of what you think it's going to be. Yeah. And I think this was the case for quite a few people, Brian, Rob and everyone included. And so you picturing this film, and then you go to the cinema and you watch a film, and it isn't the same as a film that's in your mind. Yeah. Like after seeing all this information, that must make it even harder to kind of handle. Yeah. Because you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, you told me it's going to be this film, and it's not. Yeah. And I think if that's the case, then that must make it quite difficult as well.
I mean, how many of us expected Madeline to survive the pre-title sequence? We all assumed it was going to go down the Majesty's route, whereby, they were going to be happily ever after, and then boom, Madeline gets killed in the pre-titles, and then that's Bond back in action. That I mean, obviously that's going back a little bit now, but that was sort of our predictions, and probably a lot of people's predictions. Little did we know we'd get the Majesty's angle, especially in the soundtrack. But that was foreshadowing Bond's death this time instead of, his lady. Nice. Oh, mate, we've got so much to talk about, haven't we?
I know. It's going to be good fun, man.
Yeah,
I'm going to look forward to it.
All right, so let's wrap up episode 1, First Impressions. We're going to be back tomorrow with the pre-title sequence, going deep on that. Just so you know, it's 30 days of No Time to Die. But what we're going to do, just so we don't, implode like we almost did last time with 30 Days of Spectre. We're going to go Monday to Friday. So you're going to get a podcast every single day, Monday to Friday. We're having the weekends off. And then, it's not really 30 days really, but we're going to be, Monday to Friday, every day throughout October. So we will be back tomorrow with part 2 of 30 Days of No Time to Die, or No Time to Die month, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, man, lots to be talking about, innit?
Especially the pre-titles, I'm amping. And also, I mean, there's a lot in that one, so we may even split that into two-parter.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll see how we get on. But yeah, I can't wait to discuss it, man. Looking forward to tomorrow already.
All right then, good stuff. Until tomorrow, James Bond Radio will return. I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And we will see you in the morning, everybody, with part 2. See you then.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.